we are. Welcome, welcome to day one of Blossoming Women. I am so excited to be kicking off this series with an interview with Hilary Hahn, which I will introduce you to Hilary in just a minute. You can see she's here with us already. But what I want to do before we dive in is ask everybody just to take a minute to become really present to this space. We live in a world that is so busy and there's so many distractions going on. And my intention for Blossoming Women is that we just take a time, this precious pocket of time to slow down. So if you can turn off any other distractions and just become present to this space. This is a space of honoring women and honoring women's stories. And we want to honor your story as well along the way. So as much as you want to tune in and leave snippets of your story in the comments sections, as you tune into the stories of the women in this group, you're going to hear things that feel like it's almost like we're telling your story in different ways. So as much as you want to do that, we would love to hear from you. But you can just use this space to relax, breathe, sip on your cup of tea and absorb the stories of the beautiful women that are coming into this space. So thank you so much for being here. Hilary Hahn, we have been crossing paths in the World Wide Web for quite a while now. So when I decided to do this series, I was so inspired to reach out to you because I know we have a lot of things in common. So welcome, Hilary, and thank you so much for being day one, the first speaker in this beautiful series.
Thanks so much for having me here.
So for those of you that haven't come across Hilary until this moment, Hilary has managed to take her passion for art and turn it into a six-figure business using the natural world and the divine for inspiration. But she also has a passion for sustainable fashion and conscious living. So we'll get into all these bits and pieces. But because this is story time, what I want to do is start with getting to know a little bit more about you from early days. And so for the women that are tuning into this, I invite you to, as I ask the questions in this series, to start thinking about it through your own lens as well. And so if we start by going back to being 8 or even 10 years old, depending on where your memories are clearest, can you connect to who you were then, Hilary, and the personality that you had? And did you have a sense that you had this artistic sort of nature even at that age?
Yeah, definitely. I love to think back to my childhood. So as you know, like I'm an artist, I'm a coach, I'm living here in Los Angeles, but I was originally from not a small town, actually the biggest town in Kentucky. So Kentucky, which is in the southeast of the country of the US, and it's sort of like a melting pot, the city that I'm from, because it's sort of, some people consider it Southern, some people consider it Midwestern. And then it's also very close to the East Coast, just a state away from being on the coastline. So, yes, when I was, 8 years old, 9 years old, I remember very clearly, and this age is an age that my son is now. He's 9 years old now. So I often think like, how was I like when I was in fourth grade or when I was in third grade? And definitely had that sense of being really inspired by art, always wanting to create something and not necessarily always following the rules. So when my teacher might give me an assignment, I might take it and then I might do something else with it to make it like more creative or to break the rules actually in some way, to break the rules in of the assignment in some way to change it. So one project I remember, we were just drawing these little dinosaurs actually, and they were flat. They were like these flat dinosaurs, But instead, I wanted to take a stapler. I wanted to staple around the whole dinosaur. I wanted to stuff it. I wanted it to be three-dimensional. And then I wanted there to be a baby as well. So something like, all the rest of the dinosaurs in the class all were like flat and they were all hanging up. And then mine was like three-dimensional with a stapler, and it was stuffed with stuffing or paper or whatever I found. And so definitely I loved to be creative then and think a little bit outside of the box.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of a recent conversation I had with my son about entrepreneurship, because I also had a little bracelet company where I made tons and tons of tiny little beaded bracelets,
Yeah.
and they caught on like wildfire. And kids started buying them like during school hours, actually. And it was all success, with that little bracelet enterprise, which was like around fifth grade, until one of the bracelets snapped and the beads spilled all over the hallway outside of the water fountain. And then, of course, that became a distraction, right, during the school day. And so, thinking back, the roots of entrepreneurship were there. I was loving and enjoying and creating something and selling it and all of that. Yeah. But then just like my teachers, I remember them being like, this business has to be done because of the bracelet that snapped, in the hallway. And then that also brings into the question, like, how are your products made, right? Are they long lasting? For me as a 10-year-old, I was probably just learning an art form or learning to master something. So
So
yeah.
your art teacher, when you created something that was so different to the instructions that were given, she or he was obviously supportive of you doing that.
I had a really awesome fourth grade teacher. I still remember her. And she liked to paper her classroom door. Like she liked to turn her whole classroom door into an art installation. So from outside, it would be like a classroom door, but like the whole thing would be like a papered bird or something that you would walk through. So she was super creative as well.
Yeah.
And so I think I got lucky, in that way.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
interesting, the teachers that we have, and whether they're teachers that we have in current day, that the things that we're passionate about now, or teachers that we had as children, it can be very defining in what we decide about ourselves moving forward. My clear
totally.
memory of that age was drawing a snowman, and the instructions were just that, and the girl next to me was drawing these beautifully intricate snowflakes, and I was fascinated by that, so I started, and then my whole page became covered in these little snowflakes, and the teacher was very derogatory about it and dismissive. And I think that was a really defining moment for me, in that I'm not artistic. I can't draw. I can't do that. And so that was a really, shut the door sort of moment that didn't get opened again until my own children were in primary school and I started to doodle and color in. So it is an absolute gift to have the teachers that foster the uniqueness. It doesn't have to look a certain way.
I absolutely agree. And it's
Mm.
like, when we shut a child down,
Mm.
that's expressing something so creative or exploring something,
Yeah.
you know. Um, it's wild how big of an impact that can have, and how I've heard that, because I taught art then. I went on to teach art,
Yeah.
and I heard from a lot of, people commenting that weren't necessarily trained, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes even parents might project something, right, on like a child's abilities, and we all do, unfortunately, knowingly or unknowingly,
Mm.
right? When we're projecting maybe a little bit. And I think that
Absolutely.
every artwork, like I'm looking, like this is a painting behind me that I recently did. And every artwork also goes through that period where it looks like you feel like it's really bad. And then like it becomes something that you really love.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's something that really fascinates me about the creative process is there has to be room, there has to be spaciousness there
Yeah.
to allow us to make mistakes,
Yeah.
right? So that
And
we,
that just that beautiful uniqueness. So, I'm thinking I was celebrating Iris Apfel, who was this fabulous 102-year-old that died on the 1st
Mhm,
of March, who, for
mhm,
those that don't know who she was an incredibly flamboyant presence in the fashion world. And the
mhm.
way she dresses, I imagine, there would be millions of parents across the globe that would be slightly embarrassed and horrified to have a child that was that flamboyant in their early
Mhm.
stages,
Yeah.
because you stand
Mhm,
out, you can't help but stare and look. But
mhm.
look at who she came on to become and how many people she inspired. They made a Barbie doll of her, and she was an absolute icon for many, many people, but so unique. She didn't follow any rules or trends. She just set her own. And so I think, every step of the way in this artistic endeavor, whether it's, music or drawing or art or fashion or whatever it is, it's the beautiful uniqueness, the people that are prepared to step outside the box and do something different that inspire us. So when you came to the end of your schooling
Mhm.
as a teenager, whatever you were
Yeah.
17, 18,
Mhm.
did you feel like you had a clear sense then of what you were here to do in the world?
Oh, wow. That's it. You know what? I love that question
Wow.
because I feel like I knew that I wanted to do something really creative. I
Yeah.
knew I wanted to be a creator of some sort. Um, Things that ended up surprising me. So when I was graduating, when I was like graduating and then going on to college, I had taken a lot of intensive art classes. And I was very between art and actually an acting career, a career in acting and film directing and all of that. And so I kind of combined the two a little bit in university, and I created a lot of set designs, and then I directed plays, and I would direct them through the lens of set design. And then of course I took a bunch of art classes and had like a double, double focus there where I was still painting and doing all of that. So I don't think I really knew yet,
Yeah. Yeah.
who quite how things would play out. um, a big part of who I am is like an educator and a coach. And so I actually fell into educating. I fell into teaching art for at least a decade. Um, because it just came really naturally to me actually. It was to work with people. And I even started becoming then asked to teach like a lecture at like the college level and things like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think I knew that. I think like, parts of the story and the journey like really revealed themselves.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I didn't know that I I'm also a healer now. I didn't know that I had this love for wellness.
Mm.
And I think that's like where we really connect is like that authenticity and like that present, like how you ask people to get really present to the present moment. That's been a journey in my adulthood, like from my 20s on, basically getting more present and more tuned in to who I really am as a person, and then getting more tuned into the present moment. And I think that came with a little bit of maturity and self-awareness,
Yeah.
with age.
I'm sure it does. I'm absolutely
Yeah.
sure it does. I think you cottoned onto it a lot earlier than I did. But
Well, actually I had a roommate who was an actor,
yeah.
and her therapist told her, you should really go and take some yoga classes at this yoga studio. And it'll be very like meditative, very like calming, very centering. And she's like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do that, but I think you should go. And I think you should take the yoga classes at the yoga studio. And so I joined 23 years ago a yoga studio in the center of Los Angeles. And I found a way to really meditate and, go on a little bit of a healing journey. So,
Yeah. Do you know,
yeah.
I talk about these, the taps from the universe, the things that that are going to be really good for you, but you just don't make
Mhm.
time, or
Yeah.
later. And
Mhm.
I used to think about meditation and try meditation until COVID. And then that
Mm.
was, I sort of went on a bit of a downward spiral during that
Yes.
time. And that was, meditation and actually learning the art of being absolutely still in that quietness was so healing. And that was when I really took on that practice. But yeah, so that wasn't very long ago. Um, but it is that listening to that internal voice is amazing.
Mhm.
I'm fascinated because as I'm listening in the last year, I've discovered something called gene keys. I don't know if you come across gene keys.
I don't know as much about it, but it's certainly something I'm curious about.
Yeah, it's
Um,
fascinating.
mhm.
It's absolutely fascinating. And they talk about the different ways that people learn. And there's sort of six different ways, and I won't go into
Mhm.
all of them. But
Mhm.
people that are aligned, one, are that very academic, that research focus. They're the ones that do well at
Mm.
school and well at university
Right.
and can pull out the
Yeah.
books and go through all the
Uh-huh.
information.
Uh-huh.
And then line two is the people that are born with just a knowing. They've got that innate,
Mm.
it's the wisdom is theirs for those that
I
subscribe to
love that.
reincarnation. They've been here a few times and they've come
Mhm.
with their gift. And then line
Mm.
three, which is what I
Which
am,
is you?
absolute trial and error. Like you just have to keep falling on your face to learn.
Mhm.
I've got a
I
long
wonder.
story of that, but that's where my wisdom comes from is really making, I'm great at making really bold, crazy decisions. And
Mhm.
that's how I learn. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's the stuff that I learn when I'm picking myself up is where my wisdom comes. So I'm always listening when people share stories. It's like, oh, I wonder if
Oh,
you're
yeah. I feel like I'm either a two or a three.
Well, if you
Either
know
way.
what time you're born, you just go to genekeys.com and you put in your
Okay,
date of birth
mhm.
but you've got to know what time you're born. I actually had to
Okay.
write to the hospital where I was born to find out because I didn't know. But anyone can do
Wow.
it. It's free. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. So you talk about, becoming the transformation in your journey and becoming a mum and realizing that working hugely long hours and getting
Yeah.
home with a tired toddler, exhausted yourself was a really
Yes.
pivotal kind of change for you. So tell us about that part of your story.
Yeah. So, like, as you know, as my career in education, I was serving a lot of people. But
Mm.
then I came to this point where I was a new mom. We're living in a big city. We don't have a lot of like family support here. So my husband is actually from Mumbai. He's from India. We
Right.
met volunteering like for a radio station here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And we, had our friend circle and everything here. And then having a new child, like a child, and being suddenly in motherhood and all of that made me realize that I never had the dream to be a teacher for my whole life, even though I love education and I love, educating. It really made me realize that I wanted to have a life more of freedom and creativity and creating abundance for myself as a creative entrepreneur.
Mm.
And that's when I shifted into launching a signature workshop series. But it was a really challenging time as well, because, like you said, like the trial and error, you're kind of like floundering around a little bit, seeing. So it was also a time of like exploring what I might want to launch my signature workshop series in. And that built a bridge, actually. It built a bridge into entrepreneurship and to having my own business and to having the time freedom. Because as my workshops around Los Angeles became more and more popular, then I was able to free up some of my time, and I was able to then step back from my role as a teacher. And it also worked as an interior designer for about 8 years on and off. So again, really creative. Um, but yeah, just, I think that I wanted to be there for my own son. Like I had loved and supported and served so many others. Like I felt like I really wanted to be able to be present with my own son. And then, of course, when my son was very little, my husband traveled for work and all of that. So it was really on me. And I will say that those first 2 to 3 years were very sweet, but also bittersweet because there were the challenges that that taught me a lot, you know, about what I really wanted my life to look like and how I could really step into greater alignment. And I think that that's when I get into like really supporting clients with their business and what they want to do and continuing to follow that inspiration, right? Like even when it's hard, even when I think, okay, but it's so practical, you know, I'm working in Santa Monica, Malibu, and in Brentwood. I even ran an art program at Brentwood Art Center, which is a very prestigious art center. I had great positions, right? So they're very practical. How do you step away from something that makes so much sense to then follow something that's like that little urge that you have to try something new, right?
Yeah.
So,
It takes
yeah,
it takes a great deal of courage and bravery. That's what it takes. And that's, like this is um the stopping point for so many people. It's the practicality versus what is really quite impractical in if you think of it in logical terms. It's like I've got a job, I know how much money I'm going to be making. I
yeah,
I can show up, it's things are working. Why the heck would you want to rock the boat?
yeah.
And for those of us with that entrepreneurial bent, we just can't help but stand on the side of the boat and rock.
Yep.
It doesn't make any sense. And sometimes I think, Edwina, really? Do you really need to rock the boat again at the moment? I had a funny conversation I was sharing with some clients in a group call yesterday. I woke up on Saturday morning and I just had this idea and I was like, I think I'm going to open a shop and I can see it and
Oh my gosh.
it's got flowers and it's got these
Oh my
I love
goodness.
vintage clothes and it's
He's
got
so
great
beautiful.
coffee and it's got and my
Mhm.
husband's just like uh-huh. Go again.
I mean, that's the best, right? Like when you tell your loved one and they're just so they already know you, right? So they probably already have an idea about what to, you
Yeah,
know, what to expect and to always expect to be maybe a little bit surprised.
yeah,
Um, yeah. But
yeah.
that sounds really beautiful. And I love the idea of the flowers and the vintage clothes. I'll be there as soon as it opens.
I have part of the way that I teach and work with people is through, like looking at movies and books and stories and what are the characters
Hmm,
that make you lean
brilliant.
in? What are the ones that you just want to watch over and over and over again?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
my movie is Chocolat. I don't know if you know the movie.
Oh yeah, Juliette
Oh,
Binoche, right? Is
oh
that
yeah.
Juliette? Yeah. Hmm.
I want
Yeah.
to be her when I grow up.
Oh my gosh.
But it is that, like that beautiful old village with the fabulous old
Hmm.
buildings and
Mm.
the characters and Judi Dench is in that and like I just love it. So I'm going to have my, chocolate shop that's has chocolates, but it'll be more than that. But
Oh,
that's where my visual comes from. It's just being that
that's
the
beautiful.
disruptor in the village. That'll be me.
Hmm. I love that.
Oh dear. So it is, when we think about our stories, it's in these challenging times. So
Mhm.
you have a new baby, and then suddenly your world gets turned upside down, and there's the uncomfortable adjustment. But as much as we wish these times away, they're really where often the greatest gifts come from.
Yeah, where we find ourselves,
Yeah.
right? Like that's like where I started going. I said, you know what, I'm just gonna go to some workshops that I really am like curious about. I mean, I
Mm,
think one I was like woodworking in downtown Los Angeles. I made a cutting board or something, but I
yep.
just wanted to like get out there
Yep.
and like connect with people, you know, and connect with people that were doing things that maybe were less practical, you
Mm,
know. I went to another one hosted by two sisters that are designers that are really, really successful textile designers out in the desert, out in the high desert. And it was like an overnight, 2 days. It was almost like retreat like. And that really inspired me. That really activated something. So just by going and being like in community with other women that were all doing their things. And like you said, hearing those stories
Yeah.
about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then that lit something in me that said, I'm going to go and do this too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you think about your journey through life to where you are now, what are, that was one challenge. Is there any others that kind of come to your mind that you feel in hindsight offered you great gifts in your life, lessons?
Yes, yes. So I was thinking about that
Mm,
um, because sometimes it's like, sometimes we don't even realize our challenges are challenges, right? Because we just like are so resilient, we overcome them,
mm,
But I was thinking about my childhood, and definitely a really interesting challenge is that my parents they separated when I was
mm,
around 12.
yeah.
So that was always a big one for me for a really long time. And then when I went on my yoga, 20-year yoga awakening, I'll just call it that, a 20-year awakening that has lasted for
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah.
I discovered something. And actually, this is right before the pandemic, but um, I discovered that actually I have ADHD, and I never knew it actually my whole life.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like an unseen challenge, a challenge that I didn't even know that I had,
Yeah.
that I've been dealing with my whole life, that I never was aware of,
Mm,
right? Because for whatever reason, I didn't identify it.
yeah.
And so then when that veil was kind of lifted, I was able to really see myself with a lot more compassion, and also a lot of like perspective really fell into place. A lot of that, understanding, self-understanding,
Mm,
which has actually helped me again on my journey with the gift, I guess, is that understanding, that self-compassion.
yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. I think it's interesting these different things like ADHD and autism and all these different
Yeah,
things that have become so much more prevalent and so much more, like there's so much more awareness around it all.
there's more awareness. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I wonder along the way if, I have concern about pathologizing all these things and,
I agree too. I can agree with that as well. I almost liked that I grew up very free of like having any labels,
yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I actually can feel into that as well.
Mm,
But I'll just say from like an awareness, like a self-awareness
yeah,
perspective, that it's been
absolutely.
almost useful as an adult to be able to understand more
Yeah,
about, just like my way of like being in the world,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was fascinating because one of the women in a mastermind that I run
Mhm.
was saying just in the last couple of weeks that she has ADD and eating sugar has the opposite effect on her. So they use stimulants to treat children with ADD,
Mhm.
and to give
Mhm.
somebody else that it's an upper, but for somebody with ADD, it has a
It's like
calming
a
effect.
downer.
And
Yeah.
so for people with ADD to eat sugar, it has a different effect to those of us that don't. And I was having this conversation with my husband, who is a sugar fiend and very definitely um, has ADD, although not diagnosed, but you only have to spend 10 minutes with him to know that he does.
Mhm.
And he said, yeah, yeah, if I'm feeling wound up and I can't just, like I just
Mhm.
need to calm my thoughts and get back, he goes for sugar. And to me, that makes no sense because if I eat sugar, it winds me up. I
You'll
can't.
be wired up. Yeah. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's just in these conversations like this, sharing stories, where we
Hmm.
go, huh, now that makes sense. Now
Yeah,
it makes sense.
totally.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I also heard the same thing about coffee. So like coffee is actually
Similar.
having that similar effect. It's like
Yeah.
bringing things into focus.
Yeah.
I was thinking, maybe that's why I always, enjoyed my cup of
Coffee.
coffee so much.
Yeah.
Um, because it
Yeah,
never made me feel like hyper or anything like that.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, fascinating. I think that, when we talk about having superpowers and, the people that work with you, the things that you do effortlessly, other people are in awe of. It's that, like, what is your superpower? Whenever I have a conversation with my bookkeeper, I look at her with these eyes of like, how's your brain work? Because my brain does not
Right.
understand
Yeah.
numbers. I just
Mhm.
don't. And so, we have these superpowers. We all have them. What are your superpowers, Hilary? What are the things that people just go lean into you for? What do you feel like they are?
Well, definitely like creativity, like
Yeah,
really out of the box, thinking. So if somebody is like feeling maybe stuck on something or wondering how to get the energy really flowing again, like in their business or even in their life, that's something I'm really good at is, coming up with creative solutions or helping to inspire. So I
yeah,
love to plant, like helping other people to get back to their inspiration, to following that wherever it leads, to aligning with that intuition,
yeah,
that, that inner guidance that we all have.
yeah.
So I think that those are my main ones, my main superpowers. And then, of course, anything related to art, creativity, and, creating like abundance, like in business.
Yeah,
That is like, I can just go on and on about
yeah.
it. So my business mind starts working, and that's actually a bit unusual. I think not necessarily unusual, but you don't hear it that much. The creative who's also very, very business minded, you
Yeah.
know? Um, so that's what people usually say about me.
Yeah.
Um,
I think being able to
yeah,
combine those is absolutely a superpower.
yeah, to combine the two, it's
Yeah,
like the art and the science, right?
yeah,
Like this series, the art and the science. I love having where the two meet, the practical and the
yeah,
spiritual. And
yeah,
then I feel like that's a very powerful combination.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
absolutely. In my mind, when I was thinking about the art and science of creating a blooming,
Hmm.
beautiful life,
Hmm.
for my central value philosophy that guides everything for me is connection to the natural world. And, there is so much science about the effects of grounding and the effects of spending time in nature and the effects of having, obviously from my background with naturopathy and functional nutrition, it's like the science in the foods that we eat. But there's the art of putting all these pieces into practice together, the art of bringing all the pieces of the puzzle together. And when I saw in your bio about the sustainable fashion, that is part of that whole picture as well. I mean, there's a science to the fabrics that we wrap our body in, and as much as we can use what is from the natural world, the healthier we are. All these different pieces come together.
Yeah, and so that's exactly what that was my signature workshop series that I came up with was in sustainable fashion and sustainable fibers. And then that's what I went on to lecture at universities about. For I did that for about a decade. Linens, when you say the science of like studies have shown that when we wear linen, actually our whole frequency, our whole vibration actually elevates, which I think is really fascinating to think that the clothing that we put our bodies in can actually elevate our energy, right? Like in the same way that food, in the same way that eating the right foods does.
Yes.
Um, and
I,
so I became really, really interested in natural indigo, which is an ancient dye practice that dates back to the 7th century. And I started traveling the world and I went to Japan and I visited artisans there and I learned about how to keep the natural indigo vat, the organic vat. It's a fermentation process and how to that's the original blue color. That was what jeans and denims were
yeah,
dyed with before the invention of chemical dyes.
yeah,
And this is something very close to my heart is nature and sustainability. And so when you mentioned that, that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
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 So, you know, just the connection between all of the things that we have that we wear, right? Because there's shelter, there's the house that we live in, there's the clothing that we put on our bodies, and then there's like the food that we feed ourselves. Those are like the three main needs that we, buy and purchase for every day. And the clothing one I find is often like an overlooked piece
Mm.
because it is a necessity, right? And we can love fashion, we can appreciate fashion, um, but how to make our fashion and our clothing like more and more sustainable.
Mm.
And so that's an e-course that I have called Intro to Natural Dyes, where
Mm.
people are dyeing with pomegranates, madder root, and natural indigo, and those are the primary colors, and then they mix those to create all of the secondary colors from there. So it's
Oh,
very fascinating. I could do it. Maybe
oh,
I'll come
yeah.
back one day and we could do a deep dive on
Yeah.
that subject.
I'd love to. There's a few bits there. One is that I've only found out about the linen. I used to think bamboo was like, but apparently it's
It's
like
not because it's resuscitated, but it is still good. But
yeah.
that's what I'm always like that. I don't like to say like one thing is like horrible because we're
Mm.
just like with the
Yeah.
sustainability journey, I feel like we're all just trying to make
Yeah.
like when I was like that stressed out mom, like I'm just trying to make the best decisions that I can in the moment, like with what I have, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I did go and buy linen sheets last year.
Ooh,
It was, yeah, it's quite, I waited till they were on sale. They're appallingly expensive. But
that sounds really, really nice.
linen sheets
Yeah.
are amazing. And I mean, I was a very broke mum with four children for many years. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
staying true to this value took a lot more resourcefulness, but I just bought
It
everything from
can.
op shops. So
Mhm.
you can always find the more beautiful clothes in op shops, or you call them thrift stores, I
Thrift
think.
stores, but that's like when I would teach my workshops, those actually receive
Right.
the dyes even better. So natural
Mm.
fibers that are slightly broken in, that are slightly worn in, are like some of the most ideal for these ancient dye practices. And so, people would come and they would bring like amazing, incredible pieces that they found at different up shops, and then they would create something really really quite beautiful. And I love to help people spark inspiration in that way,
Yeah.
because it's like for adults, like getting back to their creative souls when they haven't had a
Mm.
chance, and they can make something that's so useful,
Very fun.
and integrate it into their lives. So yeah.
Later this year, I'm doing a beauty school, and it's going to be about the makeups that we choose and the skincare and
Uh-huh.
clothes and in
Yes.
our homes, and like
Ooh,
it's going to be something quite different, and I'm so excited to do it. So
that
maybe
sounds really really,
you'll have to come back and talk.
yeah, I would love to hear about that.
Be
Yeah.
really fun.
Mhm.
Um, what dims your light, Hilary? What turns that beautiful creativity and that light off?
I think really the first thing that came to mind is just, I'm a pretty like a happy person, right? Like I just kind of wake up in a pretty good mood and I go through my day. And I think that the thing that really dims my light is like when I see like people that are, just like unkindness
Mm.
or people suffering. I'm very empathetic. So that really, really, I definitely feel a lot for people.
Mm.
And I would say that those two things
Yeah.
are the things that really get to me the most, like unkindness and then, just like human suffering, which
Yeah.
reminds me, it's definitely part of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what brightens your light? What gets you in that beautiful, vibrant, lit up
Well,
space?
honestly, I mean, I have to say, when I'm like well rested,
Mm. Yeah, absolutely.
I can like, there's like, so when I've got the energy reserves, right? And so I'm like, feeling well rested, that's just like a key for me as a creative, to have that creative energy. Sometimes we forget that we've got to really take care of ourselves, and we've got to have great rest, maybe spend some time out in nature, like you're mentioning, connecting with nature. So I love to do that. I love to get out and be at like the gardens. There's a beautiful gardens here that I'm a member of. So I like to go out and be in the gardens, and just like that really lights me up and then creates more inspiration. Um, Obviously, being with people is a wonderful joy as well. So those special people that, you hang out with them or you have a conversation and it sparks something. Um, yeah.
I call them my no filter friends. The people that you can just hang out with, and
Yeah.
you're not thinking about what's coming out of your mouth. You can just talk, and it's just
Great.
easy.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay. So I think I've got two last questions for you. One is cultivating excitement for the future. I feel like, it is so easy to get caught up in everything to be worried about in the world at the moment. It's so easy to get caught up
Totally.
in fear and the
Yeah.
narrative that
Right.
everything's going wrong. And, I'm quite famous in my world for saying you'll always find evidence for whatever you want to believe. We will always
Mhm.
find evidence for whatever we want to believe.
Yeah.
When we get on that train of everything
Yep.
going to hell in a handbasket, it's easy to get caught in that spiral. So, how do you cultivate excitement and hope for the future?
I love this question because, you know, like you said, there's so much out there that we can see, and it's like we get to decide and we
Mm,
get to choose. And I really feel like this is like, so like my big one when I was younger, in my younger days, my 20s, when I was like a more of an activist kind of person, I like would be like, I vote with my consumerism, like with where I buy and what I choose to invest in and what kind of experiences I choose to, to buy, what kind of clothes I choose to buy, right? If I choose to get the linen or not. That was my thing then. And now it's more like inner, it's more like about attention and focus, and like, where do I choose to put my attention, you know? And I truly think that doesn't mean we ignore the bad, because I feel that sometimes we have to like actually go through the fire. I feel that we can't go around it. We have to actually go through it,
yeah,
um, which is very powerful and can be very difficult if you choose that path. But I also feel that we get to choose every day, like where we put our attention and where we put our focus. And that helps too, right? Like that helps like shift things for the better,
yeah,
for everybody, actually. And
yeah,
then we really take our power back,
yeah.
you know, because we're deciding and we're choosing. And so then I just get excited and I start like spiraling up and thinking about all of the amazing things that are shifting, hopefully for the better, in the world, and then in my own family, of course, and then in my community as well. So
I like to think of, like being a guardian of my mind. Like I'm the one that can
mm,
control this, what's filtering in
yeah,
and choose to
definitely.
tune into. And it makes such a massive difference. I spoke earlier about going on a downward spiral during the great pandemic. And
Mm-hmm.
it's because I started to tune in to everything that was going wrong.
All of
I haven't
right,
watched the news for
right.
years for this reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, it was like I started looking at numbers and I started looking at all the things that we had to be scared of and the things that, everybody just
Right.
down and this energy. And I just got on this downward spiral where I saw, got to the point where it's like, I don't know if I want to wake up tomorrow. Like it just feels like, I was so worried
Really
for
heavy.
children and for everybody that I loved. And at that time, I had clients in the US that were going through you had the Black Lives Matters and the shootings and
Oh yeah, I was absolutely wild in the US. Like
oh my gosh, it was just such a full on
it was a
time.
lot. It
And
was
it
a
was a
lot.
clear
Yeah.
decision at that time, right? I need to focus on the things that I can affect. I
Hmm.
need to focus on what I can do, and I need to focus on, like, feeling like shifting this and bringing back
Yeah.
that hope for the future. And it started with, that was when I started meditating, but also just like beautifying, taking time to get dressed in the morning, taking
Yeah.
time to nourish myself and feed myself properly, taking time to get out in nature and look at this beautiful world that we live in and get back in the garden and just turn all that other stuff off. And,
Right.
when we can be the guardians of our minds and choose the people we're speaking to and choose the conversations we're tuning into, suddenly the whole world changes. Suddenly everything takes on a very different aura and picture. So that whatever that practice of cultivating that is for each of us, it's so important to be proactive and aware of it.
In yoga, there's a word for that. It's called viveka, and it actually means discriminative discernment. So it's
Um,
like you're like discerning and you're like discriminating like exactly
yeah,
how you cultivate like your attention and like what you put it on.
yeah,
So which is exactly what you've described so
yeah,
beautifully. And it's true that it can be overwhelming when we see all of the different things and when we tune into it more so. I'm also a big believer that like we can take like these small actions, right, that can,
yeah,
change things for the better
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
And so that makes me feel more empowered as well as like when I take an action that I think is going to really like make the world a better place or change something in my community that I don't agree with,
mm,
then that also can be a balm because then you feel a little bit empowered there.
yeah,
And absolutely love that we get to tune into conversations like this over, obviously the news thrives off of having conversations that are more like the fear-based, right? They're fear-based conversations that then have people in fear and then people keep going back with the fears again. And it becomes more like a negative, it's like a feedback loop
yeah,
that that's very easy actually to become, I think, for anyone to
yeah.
become affected by. Mhm.
Yeah, it's in my community. We've been reading the book Build the Life You Want. I don't know
Oh,
if you've
wow.
come across that.
I've heard
It's
of
really
that. Yeah.
Oprah was
Hmm.
involved. It's
Hmm.
Arthur Brooks, but
Okay.
he actually talked about, like we've got more gray matter in our brain that is designed to look for things to be scared of and worried about because that's what
Right.
is
That makes
alive.
sense. Yeah.
We're
Right.
supposed to, spot the tigers and
Yeah.
the lions and the,
The threats.
and so we've got this reticular activating system, this part of our brain, which as a vision builder and doing
Hmm.
vision boards, I know that
Hmm.
you do,
Yeah.
like I do,
Yeah.
this is how we teach our brains what to look for. And so if we're constantly looking for the tiger, looking for the thing to be fearful of, the next statistic, or, the economy's this, or the, politics that, or whatever,
Hmm.
that's what we focus on. We're teaching our brain to focus on that. So we can teach, that's the beauty of doing the vision boards that you and I teach, is that teaching your brain to look for the things that you want, to find the beauty, to find the peace, the freedom, the abundance, all of the magic
Yeah.
that we want. We can teach our brains to look for that. So this is the art and science of doing it.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So my last question is, we're all here for a reason. We're all on this planet to walk our own unique path. We have a higher purpose. Are you connected to what yours is?
Yes, yes. I really think that the word that keeps coming through for me, it's like that, it's like this area where like healing and art meet, but I think it's that inspiration.
Mm,
It's really to help people find a way back to that, to
yeah,
find a way back to their authentic, selves and to live these lives of inspiration that they feel very happy to these are like the women that I met when they started coming to my workshops and I started getting people coming in. And there was so many, whenever I tried to pinpoint who my ideal client is,
Yeah.
right? It was very difficult for me actually because I'd had thousands and thousands of people attend my workshops and
Yeah.
they were all very different and very unique. But what kept coming to me is they're all coming to reconnect
Mm.
actually to either their inner child, their inspiration, their creativity, some part of their soul that they really wanted to experience more deeply.
Yeah.
And so that's why I call it like soul coaching or soul business, because it's really about like helping people get back to their souls, because that's the process I went through as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a little welcoming video before our interview today, and I describe it, it's like the center of the flower. And when we're born, we're just
Mm,
this beautiful, completely open and receptive, open-hearted
yeah.
soul. And then as we go
Hmm.
through life, we collect messages about ourselves and fear and pain, and slowly, the petals of the walls all come up and we become, you know, live in this smaller, more confined world where we protect ourselves and do less and less and see less and less. And it's, like our world becomes very contracted. And then
Absolutely.
through doing this work, I see it as this blossoming, it's this gentle unfurling
It's
of
beautiful.
letting
Yeah.
that light and soul actually shine again. And I that visual in my mind just feels so beautiful in the way that we present ourselves in the world, and the open-hearted women like you that I get to speak to, and the light that I see in you and that we get to follow and learn from. It's such a gift when we allow ourselves to show up like this in the world. So I'm so grateful to you. I'm so grateful to you for taking the time to do this interview, for sharing your story. I know you have a beautiful meditation for those in our audience
Yes.
that would like to tune into your work a little more. Can you
Mhm.
tell us what that is?
Yes, absolutely. It's called the Aligned and Abundant Morning Meditation. So just it's a beautiful practice to tune back into yourself. It's a short guided meditation, and I take you on a journey through alignment to connect with your inner abundance, which is obviously the true abundance is within, and then what we cultivate within is what we then start to witness in our worlds. So that's the meditation that I'd love to share with you.
So beautiful. So I'll pop a link to that under this interview, and I'll
Mhm.
also put it in. There'll be an email that'll go out with a replay of this interview, so it'll go out in the email as well. Hilary,
Amazing.
thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for your
much.
time.
This was a pleasure. Thanks, Edwina.
I know you're at the other end of your day, so I hope you just get to put your feet up now and relax, although you're probably on mummy duty now.
My son will be home soon.
Sounds good. All
Great.
right,
Thank you
darling,
so
thank you
much.
so much.
It was a pleasure. Bye.
Bye. All right, beautiful people. Well, for those of you that have managed to catch us live and tune in, I am so grateful to you for being here. And tomorrow I have another gorgeous guest for you. So we'll be coming in again at 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, or 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for those of you on the other side of the planet. All right, that's it from me this morning. So much love, and bye for now.